Welcome to the next listener training video. My name is Mike Bearden and I will be your host for this training video. Also the narrator, and I'm also the founder of Next Listeners. So I am really excited that you're here, that you've taken the opportunity to look into what it is to be a Next Listener with us. It's one of a few different pieces of our training materials. And this video, if nothing else, will just kind of begin to explain why we do what we do. We do take our listening to others seriously, and so training is part of that. And I love the fact, again, that you're taking just a few moments out of your busy schedule to take a look at this video, and hopefully it encourages you, hopefully it educates you, and we'll go from there. All right, this may sound obvious, but as we're going to talk about listening, it's obvious that Next Listeners listen. That's what we do, it's who we are. And if that's you, let's keep going. Simon Sinek is one of my favorites. He's great at TED Talks, and he's much more than that. But he had this great quote on listening. Listening is not understanding the words of the question asked. Listening is understanding why the question was asked in the first place. Thank you, Simon, for bringing up the why question. That's it. If you don't understand, and you don't, as a listener, seek to understand where it's coming from, what you're listening, what you're hearing from the other person, you're really just hearing them, and we'll define that later. But to understand why the question was asked in the first place, that it kind of reflects your heart motive of why you're engaging with this person in the first place. And here's a fun fact for you. Let this soak in. Less than 2% of the people, of anybody, have had any formal education in listening. Yet, people spend around 70 to 80% of their day engaged in some form of communication, and about 50% of their time is devoted to listening. I guess if I were to just kind of summarize that, that means 50%, half of my day, 40% of my day involves listening, of which, if I'm not part of that 2%, I'm ill-equipped. I have no formal education in how to truly listen. If you go anywhere in the world, it's all about communication or miscommunication, probably responsible for half this world's issues. But we can just agree with this statistic that less than 2% of everyone has any kind of education. Well, guess what? Even simply by watching this video and or doing the rest of our training materials, you'll be part of that 2%. And not that it will just benefit those that you hear and listen to, but it may even benefit you in a personal way. What a crazy statistic. 40% of my day I'm completely ill-equipped to deal with. But now you will be after this video. Understand three principles and elements that we're going to cover. Great listeners know the difference between hearing and listening. Great listeners avoid the paralyzing paradox of listening failure, or hearing when you think you're listening. And great leaders share a true intent to respond. Authentic and enduring friendships. People want authenticity. They don't want fake anymore. And if you say you're listening and they know you're not, then that's it. So, know the difference between hearing and listening. That's where we're going. You avoid that paralyzing paradox of listening failure, and you share a true intent to respond. All right, number one, great listeners know the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is simply the process of taking in an audible from another person. All the noise that we hear, someone talking to us, a car driving by, all create these vibrations in the air. They enter our ear, go through the inner ear, and they create these signals to our brain. That's hearing. Listening is hearing with the intent to respond. Hearing is important and foundational, but only the first part of listening. Here's a great description. It's been said many different ways. Be doers, not just hearers, deceiving themselves. You see, if you just hear, you're lying to yourself in that relationship, in that conversation, because you think you're listening and you're really not. And worse yet, you are lying to the person that has confided in you and to share something with you. You need to be a doer. You need to be proactive. You have to hear, take in with the intent to do something, to respond to them. It doesn't always mean that we're going to give the most sage counsel and advice. Many next listeners may not have a PhD in front of their name, but we're going to be educated more than the 2% on what it is and how to listen, and more important, why we listen. Number 2, great listeners avoid the paralyzing paradox of listening failure. What in the world is listening failure? It's hearing when you think you're listening. You ever been there? You ever heard someone, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but like Charlie Brown's teacher when on the cartoon, wah, 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 wah. It's a bunch of noise. Doesn't matter what my brain is interpreting from the sound vibrations into my ear. I'm just not even listening. I'm not even hearing them. But listening failure happens when you hear when you think you're listening. Now, granted, we have our own life crisis, our own life seasons, and it's not always easy to listen to people. Believe me, I understand that. But understand that great listeners can avoid this. Great listeners need to avoid this before they enter conversation, before they enter a time with someone who chooses to confide and trust them with something they say. Listening failure happens. I love this picture here. We kind of was driving by a fast food restaurant, and it just made me understand that this is communication failure, not just listening failure. But listening failure for us happens when we miss the various forms of communication from others. It's so true when we miss the nonverbals. If you have the opportunity to meet with someone one-on-one and you miss their body language, you miss understanding what's gone on with their day before you start talking. When we miss those forms of communication, our listening can fail right from the beginning. We may have wrong motives for hearing others. Have you ever thought about, well, I want to listen to that person. They're famous, or I want to be the confidant of that person. Well, if your motives are anything but the best intent to encourage and bring hope into conversation and equip that person who shares with you, then your motives might be wrong in the first place. And third, we may misconceive the very nature of others and block our ability to listen. When you don't take time to get to know someone before your conversation even begins, you may just completely miss the whole nature of the person themselves, where they're come from, what's gone on in their day. You need to take the time to do that, or it could possibly block your ability to listen. Now understand that 3, not only the difference between hearing and listening, but we also have the opportunity to share a true intent to respond. Let me show you what I mean with a true intent to respond formula. The true intent to respond formula: don't pretend to listen, join others in their next steps together, and don't give up. When you put them all together, they add up to a true intent. If you're wondering and questioning, hey, I want to be a great listener, you can evaluate your conversations. You can evaluate your time with someone else by asking yourself, did I kind of fake it? Did I really pretend to listen when I was focused on what was going on with my own day personally? Or was I unwilling to listen and join if they asked, hey, what are some next steps for me? Did I punt on that one? Did I avoid that? Or have you just given up? I said, I can't listen to this person anymore. Well, that's a formula for whether or not you have that true intent to respond as a listener. So let's review. Next listeners are going to know the difference between hearing and listening. They're going to avoid this paralyzing paradox of listening failure, and they will share a true intent to respond. Authentic listening comes from a combination of true love of being with others and a true life perspective of your place in this world. You see, I really feel that this is another equation for authentic listening. If you don't like being with others, you probably wouldn't be the best listener. So that's an easy one to check the box off on. Do I really like being with other people? Yeah, all right. Well, also understand that that combined with true life perspective of your place in this world is the working, awesome equation of authentic listening. In other words, you are unique. You've gone through life with a unique perspective and have experienced life in a way that no one else other than you has done. You bring to the table a unique perspective on listening. And you may gravitate towards, or others may gravitate towards you because of that life experience. So if you embrace that life experience, who you are in this world, and you love being with others, your chances of authentic listening are greatly increased. But understand this as well. With great listening comes even greater responsibility. We here at Next Listeners, we take everything we do very seriously. Now understand this. I was told a long time ago, Mike, take life seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And that little nugget of wisdom has stuck with me my entire life. And I want you to understand, hey, take listening very seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Yet, we do have a great responsibility. Someone's going to talk to someone they trust. They're going to feel confident. They're going to feel comfortable with. There's that element of confidentiality that we have to honor. And there's a great responsibility that comes when someone chooses to trust whatever's going on in their life with you. So understand that we as an organization, we definitely feel the weight of that responsibility. We feel the honor to be entrusted with that, but we do feel the responsibility that comes with that. And we'd like to make sure that you do as well. So in a quick review, Next Listeners, guess what? You listen. And I would like to, before we end, I just got caught up in a thought here. I want to thank you for considering becoming a Next Listener with us. And this, as well as other materials, training materials that we have, I want to make sure that I'm available for you. I don't want this to be a training video of how to just plug and play and off you go. I'd be hypocritical to not be available for you as well. So I'm here to listen to you and look forward to whatever is next for our next listening relationship. So take care of yourself. And again, this is Mike Bearden. I'm really thankful that you've taken the opportunity to even just watch this video. I hope it encourages you and again, prepares you for what's next with our Next Listeners.